Today we're going to look at how to work the neck and unwind some of the neck and get some more flexibility in the neck, and the different things that I check for when there comes to me a problem with the neck that isn't working in the range of motion or has swelling or pain. So the first thing I do is I check the lymphatics of the neck and see to be sure that the fluid is moving. One of the things I've discovered over the years is if there's a lot of fluid buildup in the tissues, that puts a lot of pressure at a very small level, at a molecular level, but it does put pressure on the other tissues, which does have an impact on pain and on range of motion. And there's another thing that I spot right away here is that the chin is not lined up with the midline, which suggests that there's some torquing in the dural tube of the cranial system, probably pulling a few of the bones of the head a little bit out of alignment. So here I'm just doing a little bit of lymph drainage on the neck to get the fluid out of the tissues of the neck area. Sometimes just getting this out, the fluid out, can change an entire situation. I worked on somebody one time whose fingers were numbing, and he'd been to other therapy. Nothing helped. It turned out to be a swollen lymph node that was pressing upon the nerves, and once that was drained, the pressure was relieved off of the nerve, particularly the radial nerve, and he was able to have his feeling back. And it took about 5 minutes in order for that to remedy itself. So there's a great value in checking for the fluids. And I just go up into the chin and lower part of the face and head. Okay. With her head being a little bit out of alignment, her head should be about here, placed about here to be correct with her body. So that would suggest that there's a shearing going on in that cerebral spinal fluid, in the sphenoid bone, that there's some shearing taking place that's taking the structure out of its midline. It's not very much, and she probably doesn't really notice it, but it is out of alignment. So to get into the muscles of the neck, I just run my fingers up into the muscles. And again, not with a lot of pressure, just with enough pressure that the muscles are going to open up nicely. Do it on both sides. And here's where as I'm running my fingers up, I'm also doing some range of motion. Being able to tell a lot when you do this. You can tell exactly where things are hanging up. If there's any hang-ups, you can tell if there's a lot of flexibility in it. And even though there's quite a good amount of flexibility, I can feel that being off, the midline being off, because there's a little bit of difference in the way that it feels going from side to side. Okay. Now there's a cranial hold that I do that's real good to release neck muscles. It's called the cranial base release. And you have to be below the occipital bone here, and on either side of the vertebrae. You slide your fingers in there. You do not pull on this. You just lift up and let the weight of the head balance there at that base of the skull. And you point the energy of your fingers towards their eyes, and you just let them sit there. This position will also let you know what's out cranially, because what I'm feeling here is there's a drop on the left side of her occiput bone. So the occiput is tilting a little bit to the side because of the sphenoid bone being out. And then you can begin to feel the muscles beginning to release. The tendency for the people on the table with this move is they tighten up the front of their neck. And it's very, very obvious when it tightens because you can feel the help. But you don't want your person that you're working on to do that, because then there's tension in those muscles and it's not going to be as efficient as just staying relaxed and allowing this thing to release deeply underneath the skull and deep into that base of the skull. So what you're going to feel is an opening at the base of the skull and at the first vertebrae, the atlas. You're going to feel a spacing that comes into that space. When you do or study or get trained in cranial sacral work, you're able to draw your fingers in and actually access the dural tube and give that dural tube a bit of a stretch. That will take that takes a little bit more work to find it, a little more explanation to find it, but that's another tool and technique that one can apply to basic massage work if they have higher, more advanced skills. You don't have to necessarily do complete cranial work, but you can take some of those skills with you into your massage practice and you can get a lot more effective benefits for people. Now, just in doing that alone, there was a shift in the atlas that was done by her, and her chin has changed position a little bit, but the sphenoid bone is still off. And then we just keep working, turning, and range of motion. Here we're going to check this range and that range. Somebody who really can work the neck well, it's a good treat, because the necks are kind of complex in the way that they turn the head. Now there's a little more line up on the midline with the chin, although it still isn't exactly where it needs to be, and it might be out at the sacrum. More than likely it is as well, out in the sacrum. Okay, and then a little bit more work that can be done in the muscles of the neck is to apply this kind of oily lotion to the back and the sides of the neck. There's these muscles here, the sternocleidomastoid muscles, but the structure of the neck has so many delicate things underneath it that I'm always cautioning people when you work the neck. The back is okay to put a little more pressure into, but the front I would be very careful, even when you're on the main muscles. And again, you just check for any kind of tension in it. And then we'll take it on this side. This will be easier for you to see. Follow that down. Into the back. And then once again, we're going to work to unwind. And a lot of this unwinding is, it looks like I'm in control, but I'm actually quite sensitive to the direction her fascial tissue is taking this, because it is unwinding itself, and there is a little bit of an anomaly with the sphenobasilar junction. So we want all that fascia to be able to unwind itself so the bone can take itself back. And she just helped me just a little bit there. And neck there, neck there, and then you can kind of swim the neck a little bit with the motion, kind of like that. It's all good. Up and down. And then we still see that the neck isn't quite in place, so that would take the cranial sacral work to get that more aligned. But with just opening up the neck muscles, loosening some of that up, and letting the base release underneath the base of the skull there, has helped her chin to come a little bit closer on midline. But there is still some very fine tuning that needs to be done with the sphenoid bone. So that would be what I would do for the back, and then checking the lymph one more time, and you're feeling that the fluids are all flowing well. So this neck is in good shape. This is Athena Jezik on working the neck.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. And I think there's a little bell up there that you can hit that you'll get a notification every time we post. So if you want to, you can hit that too. But thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.